Okay, so can someone maybe explain to me how is it that none of you guys seems to understand yet that SegWit is actually a block size increase, and no, you don't fit more transactions into the 1 megabyte block. You actually have a bigger block on the wire. You guys are free to go on testnet. There are a couple of 1.7, 1.9 megabyte blocks over there.
BRG, you gotta. I think you need to explain that to Flipper, and Flipper's not here. Somebody should go downstairs and grab him. Maybe you could talk some sense into him.
I think if I go down there, he'll ban me.
Tell him to. No, just tell him to come up. Daniel.
I feel like he'll do the banning immediately.
What is
Thank
it?
you. I'll go down there.
What is it? To a fit or?
Yeah, we don't really get along too well.
I mean, this is fucking insane. Like, where do we need to post this so that people actually understand that there's no fucking accounting trick or any of that stupidity?
All right, he's here.
I see BRG444 is here.
What's up, Flubber?
Finally, we speak.
Yeah, well, I got some free time. I've been busy doing a couple of work on SegWit. Now, please tell me you do understand that SegWit is a block size increase, do you?
Well, I understand that with SegWit, it is like a soft fork, and it's like it's not like a block size limit, but it removes like something like some kind of limit, not the variable like max block size limit, but it removes some kind of other limit which kind of like effectively is a block size increase. Is that right?
You're both wrong. Basically, SegWit is the block size stays exactly the same. It just increases the transactions per second. Yeah,
No,
the
no,
amount of
that's
transactions
no,
fit the size
sorry,
of one block.
that's stupid. That's stupid. That's actually not the case. So, SegWit creates what is effectively how you could call it maybe an extension block, but that extension block has all of the data inside it, including the witness data. Now, if we were to activate SegWit today or tomorrow, you could push 1.5 megabyte blocks on increase because there is actually a block size transaction into the current 1 megabyte block.
Okay.
It's like I just miss Bitcoin when it was all about elliptic curve and like it was simple when I very first understood it. And this is just like a whole new level of shit that I just don't get. I can't get my head around.
Well, that's cool. I mean, no one should be expected to get all the technical details and whatnot, but we should be clear about that because, yeah, I'm pretty sure miners right now are pretty confused, and some people have been telling them that SegWit is not a block size increase, which it is. So I think it's important to straighten this out.
Yeah, but China doesn't want it, do they? China miners don't want it.
Well, they don't. Indeed, they don't right now. But I mean, I listened to Phil's chat with Mr. Odell earlier today, and it is quite kind of disappointing to see all of this apparently sky is falling attitude from everyone right now. If we're being reasonable, it's been maybe 2 months, 2 months and a half since SegWit has been released. Where if you compare it to previous soft forks, we're uh, right where the mining activation pickup is about 25%, which doesn't seem much, but when you consider that it's pretty much one guy that's spending between 25% and 100%, it's just a matter of convincing these people that SegWit is valuable for all of the ecosystem. There's an important, and I would say a majority of the industry in the West that supports it. Um, and now we'll see if we can convey this to minors. It's not a question of pushing it down their throats, but making them realize that it is the most pragmatic way forward for now. And I understand they're looking for a hard fork. The problem is that they want a hard fork from the core developers, and I don't think the core developers are going to go ahead with this because they don't have the authority to do so. They're looking for consensus from the vast ecosystem to do that, and it's clear enough that if they were to push a hard fork today, and especially if they were to push a 2 megabyte hard fork, which is ridiculous, well, in my opinion, you would see contention, and we would effectively get 2 bitcoins, which I don't think anyone wants. So
Yeah, and that's obviously why they haven't pushed it today. As Mr. Holler says, they can push it any time, and it's like, you've got to wait for the moment, haven't you? And they obviously don't want to risk it now, but what they can do is say that we're not supporting Segwit, and really, why not just work together and just say, well, we'll help support you on this, and you do this, and we'll work together and both end up with something better in the end.
yeah, well, I'd like to do that as well. The thing is, I don't think they actually care about SegWit or hard fork. I think Gian right now is essentially lost trust in the core project, which he has his reason for. Um, and so it's not necessarily and he felt I guess he felt like he had a binding agreement with the Hong Kong Consensus Roundtable, which I think was a mistake from the part of everyone. There were a lot of good intentions there, but in terms of getting each other's perspective, but cramming 12 people in a room until like 4 in the morning to get to some sort of consensus that they could somehow sign a letter down from their ivory tower to tell the ecosystem, well, this is what we've cooked up for all of you. Of course, Bitcoin just doesn't work like that. Um, so I'm still very positive about SegWit activating. It's sort of a pain in the ass that it hasn't yet, but I recognize that this is just a sign that Bitcoin has gotten so decentralized that coordinating all of these actors and all of these competing interests will increasingly take more time as we get more upgrades. And so, to me, I know that Gian probably won't listen to us or try to get him to reason to him. But what I'm trying to work on is inform all of the community in China, because I think there's been some communication gap between both of our communities, and I'm not sure to what extent they realize the benefits that we get from SegWit in terms of future scaling, in terms of well, I know they're not too keen on privacy and fungibility, but I think this is working on, and eventually potentially extension blocks as well, which would allow soft forking actual just block size increases, which is a way to go forward with this, which is backwards compatible. It's opt-in for everyone. It involves different trade-offs, but there's quite a lot of value in, and especially there's quite a lot of FUD around Lightning and how that could somehow steal some of the miners' revenue, which is complete bunkers because it just enables new use cases, and if anything, that'll make miners more money. So there's a lot of work to do in terms of informing people over there.
So you're thinking that it's just an educational and informing thing that you can just convince them, you can enlighten them to seeing the light in this, basically.
Well, it might sound paternalistic, and that's not exactly how I'd put it. It's a two-way conversation between us, and I think between us and the Chinese ecosystem. I think that's what's been missing. There's some people in the early days of this debate who created a situation where everyone sort of dug their heels in and refused to hear from the other side because the initial propositions were so sort somehow outrageous that, for example, the like Gavin and Mike sort of played behind every other core people's back and sort of made promises to the industry that basically they could not help they could not go along with because they did not bother consulting all of the other developers of core. And so the moment that Gavin and Mike and the industry and some people in the industry sort of came out in the open and said, well, but Bitcoin is increasing its block size. Effectively, all of the other contributors were immediately put on a defensive stance, and because of that, you don't get much productive discussion. People immediately went to shut down each other's ideas, and then with the result and with the divide that we're experiencing right now, and so there's still quite a lot of work to do in bridging this communication gap. Um, and to be honest, uh, like China, I think we're missing some perspective from the mining ecosystem in China. You'll see that there are a lot of people here in the West who are talking out of their ass regarding the mining centralization and whatnot, but don't understand the dynamics of all of that. And that's fair enough because we have quite just only little input from these people. But on the other hand, on our side, in in the West, there's no. I mean, there's no denying that most of the technology development happens right or wrong in the West, and so it's only right to say that there might be some education and information catching up to do for the user base over in China.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
there,
obviously we've got, not only have we got the language barrier of like most people cannot understand or speak any Chinese at all, but we've also got the Great Wall of Firewall of China issue, being that it's difficult for them to even socialize and get in touch and speak to normal people because they live in such a controlled state. So
yeah, precisely. And what I'm worried about also is that there are people who are taking advantages of this situation. Now, I'm not sure whether they're altcoiners, whether there are people that just want to get rid of Bitcoin. But just to give you an example, I posted on my Twitter account yesterday. I was looking at this guy's Reddit account, which was a 2-day-old account, who had made maybe a dozen of posts. The first couple of posts were pretty much praising Segwit, and also weirdly praising Greg Maxwell for the work that he had done. And just only 8 hours later, the very same account is trashing and making the most ridiculous statement about Segwit and also about Greg Maxwell. So I mean, either that person sort of is completely bipolar, or my feeling is that there are people who, no matter the side, small blocks, big blocks, they're just interested in throwing fuel to the fire because they understand that the best way to keep Bitcoin from moving forward is to continue to divide people. And so I think we're making steps in sort of reconciling both sides. Some would say it doesn't seem so, but I see improvements in that regard. But I also see that some people aren't interested in this happening.
are you Chinese?
No, I'm not. I'm from Quebec City. My first language is French.
Oh, okay.
Can
Are
I
you,
ask what is the percentage of hash power right now that's signaling SegWit, and how high does it have to get before that it actually changes over?
25, probably somewhere around 25% right now, and it needs to reach 95% for some like 2016 blocks, if I'm not wrong. But I mean, this is like it seems like a lot, but like I said, the moment that we get some of the pool leaders on board,
Mhm.
it can happen in a day. And so right now, um, I made the comparison earlier to someone today, and from my perspective, it seems like Jihan is sort of like what Gavin was to our community a couple of years ago, and people in China look up to him probably for right reasons. Like from what I understand, he was the first one to sort of translate the Satoshi white paper. So he's probably been an early advocate since the very early days. So and also there's of course the fact that he's producing and manufacturing at least 80, probably somewhere around 80% of the ASICs that come out. So it you if you're someone in China, you do not want to get on his bad side. And there are no reason to pull some type of radical move to go against him. Um, and and people in China also, well, the pool operators, they like to sort of move as a group. Now that might be counterintuitive to Bitcoin, where everyone should be independent. But then again, that just might be their own way to pull their weight and
Mm.
stick together in the face of what they perceive to be some major power in terms of Bitcoin development, in terms of Bitcoin Core, and that's healthy. At the end of the day, if I mean, if Bitcoin Core could sort of put out upgrades and everyone would update, just like what's happening in Ethereum, where no one asks any question, no one sort of challenges the seemingly well the authority of Vitalik or the Ethereum Foundation. That's not a healthy decentralized environment. It might come there might come a day when you don't know. Maybe the core process, the core project gets compromised and whatnot, and they put out code, and we might have to rely on miners to sort of take their ground and avoid any situation that could be disastrous for Bitcoin. So it's good that there's this balance in the ecosystem that it creates
Mhm.
it creates challenges in terms of upgrading
I
that make
I agree with you. I think the fact that this is so fucking hard to do is like testament to just how decentralized Bitcoin is. But yeah, I mean, your view sounds very much like, oh, we have the communication problem. There's like bad communication, and they just don't understand. And once we enlighten them, we can get them on board. We can get it done within a day if the right people know there's the pool. That's how it sounds like what you're saying. I mean, which is so yeah, I can believe it. But when Phil spoke today, he was speaking and it sounded like it sounded quite hostile, what was coming from the other end, from China end.
yeah, I'm not sure where Phil got that because I spoke with Adam who was at the conference. I spoke well we
Yo, you can't say who said what.
well I Adam was at the conference. I think everyone knows that and I didn't say anything about what Adam said. But just getting a general impression of in terms of what the support was over there about SegWit. From what I understand, it was generally positive. Now, there are a couple of quite a couple of people who were not really optimistic about the situation, given the challenges of what's happening with miners. But as far as I know, it's really not. It's really not that I don't think Gian is trying to stall Bitcoin. I think he figures that he hasn't gotten all of the story, and there are some pieces of the puzzle that he's missing. But because of the distrust that has grown over time between him and some of the uh, development team, um, he doesn't he's not going to go and ask some of the core developers. Well, I've been told some of these things, and is that accurate? So he's pretty much stuck in a place right now where he I mean, is he bluffing? Is he playing a game? I think he's genuinely like trying to act in his best interest and seeing what's going to unfold. And like Bitcoin is not on fire right now, whether whatever anyone says. And there are like I'm seeing people right now talking about proof of work change and sort of
Oh, I
escalating
know.
all of
I keep hearing this. I've heard a few times this proof of work change thing. I'm like, what the fuck? You fucking kidding me? You know?
Yeah, I think it would be a disaster. Like, I think it's always good to be prepared for any eventuality. But like I said, we're only 2 months and a half into SegWit activation. So maybe we can talk about these things like when the activation period ends, which would be at the end of the year. But it's still early, and there's no reason for everyone to get all agitated and talking about these things because this optics and these perceptions are not coming off well for people on the outside looking in. Like there are quite a lot of other efforts that we can be doing right now to sort of try to make progress. And if that involves sort of having some of the core developers giving some sort of roadmap upgrade as to like what the progress have been. If you look around, a couple of them have actually been toying around with hard fork proposals, and especially how we can, if that comes to be, how we can move ahead with this securely and making sure that we avoid any kind of split. And also, like I don't think that can be anytime soon, but I was it with I think Mark Friedenbach. There's still some people researching some kind of potential flex cap idea, which are not exactly the more naive one, where it's just uh, calculating the median block size and having some sort of fixed increase according to this, but it involves sort of more game theoric problems, whereas uh, you might want to make it costly for miners to increase the block size, and only if there's enough demand from the market to increase it. And so they want my they want my they might want to trade off a little subsidy to create a larger blocks where they could capture more fees. There are a couple of research being done. It's unfortunate that some people will find it unfortunate that it's not higher priority. Um, but I don't think it should be because if we activate SegWit as soon as possible, um, I mean Peter Woolley is still working on Schnorr signatures and signature aggregation. If we're able to get that in pipeline as soon as possible as well, that brings us to effectively somewhere around 3 MB, like full 3 MB of room, which is going to serve the demand in the near term, and that also gives us even more time to build all of the layer two infrastructure. We have to be humble about how how fast sometime and the innovation come in this ecosystem. Like uh, Tumblebit, that came out of left field. No one expected that. The same can be said for Lightning. So you never know, like if we're being too aggressive and if we're trying to accelerate progress without properly considering all of the trade-offs that we're making, we just might miss out on some solution that is just waiting in the wings, that is being cooked up, but that we don't know about yet. Now, not to say that we necessarily want to rely on these, but just saying, right? Almost every single year in the last 2 3 years, we've had like technology that no one had expected that come out and are quite promising. So we want to be careful about how we move forward. Um, and yeah, I know. And to be fair, my position is always that we want to avoid making a hard fork as much as possible because um, it's not that it couldn't have been a solution early on. I like to say that if, for example, Gavin and Mike had been more risk about things, and had properly consulted all of the ecosystem initially, we probably might have had a hard fork. But no one can tell. But we're at a point, like I said, that Bitcoin has gotten so huge that it's kind of a stretch to propose that we're able to sort of coordinate all of the people in the ecosystem to get some sort of flag day hard fork. It might be possible if we put it far enough in the future, a couple of a year and a half. But then again, uh, I think to me, at least near midterm, there are some interesting solutions that are more viable.
Wow. God bless.
Now, what about the
I think
possibility?
yeah, go ahead.
What about the possibility that, I mean, just imagine for a second you're the People's Republic of Fascism and you have someone like Jihan running the show within the community there. I mean, why wouldn't you get to him? Pay him off really well to live like a king and fucking FUD the community just to block it. I mean,
Well,
it's such
yeah,
a minor way to prevent capital flight compared to what they're doing with fucking like, all of the other stuff they're doing.
yeah. Well, that's always a possibility. I think Bitcoin is still uh, small enough that it's not it's it's not well it is on their radar now. We've seen with the actions they with the actions that they did at the exchanges. But in terms of trying to co-opt it, I think we're not quite there yet. Um,
They're putting
if
out their own coin,
if
dude. Didn't
that
you see?
comes to like if that were the case, I think you're going to see.
Is it me or has he just gone?
Yeah, we lost you.
Connection went shitty. I was like checking things myself, thinking, what?
Yeah. Sorry, I got disconnected for a second there. Um, but I think if that were to happen, unless you're suggesting that the Communist Party would uh, sort of blackmail all of the miners, which I think is
No, they
I
only need to blackmail him. I mean, he's already blackmailing all the miners by not selling them S9s if they don't not if they support Segwit.
yeah yeah. But I
Not
think
even blackmail, just reward him.
yeah, I think there's I don't know that there's blackmail happening. There's been some talks about that, and it makes sense to a certain extent. But like I said, it's also likely that it's just that no one wants to. It's a close knit ecosystem over there, and they do rely on each other. So it doesn't make sense to sort of make any unilateral move against each other. And if for example Jian were to be blackmailed by the government, then you could probably with time see some other miners deflect and start, for example, signaling or something like that. And but if that were to happen, that's when you might, with time, maybe consider a proof of work change. Now, this is not something that I'm interested in, but if it gets to that, there might be one of these scenarios on the table. But it would surprise me that we're at this stage of Bitcoin yet. And but yeah, I don't think we're quite there. But if that were to happen and there's nothing we can do about it, then Bitcoin will be stuck at 1 megabyte with no SegWit. It doesn't mean that Bitcoin is going to die. I believe that Bitcoin at 1 megabyte is still an enormous value proposition. It cuts off quite a bit of different markets. It certainly cuts off um, to a certain extent, the medium of exchange use case. But it still remains a serious challenger for safe haven. The biggest problem I see is that it would cut off any chance of improving privacy and fungibility, which is, I think, the sort of Achilles heel of Bitcoin in terms of being being the store of value. So you could see potentially a challenger. I, Maybe Monero. I think Monero has have their own scaling issues. Mimblewimble is very promising. It's hard to see how long that'll take till that'll be ready. But if that were to launch and Bitcoin sort of is stuck in the mud, it might come to be a challenger with time. Um, but yeah, it's being stuck with the status quo is just going to make the value proposition of Bitcoin even stronger in terms of store value. Um, but there's no argument to be made that it doesn't reduce its value proposition if we're not able to fully leverage its sort of technological capabilities. It pretty much leaves it as the true version of digital gold in that it's immutable as fuck. No one can govern it or change it. But it becomes a rather poor medium of exchange, which initially Bitcoin promised to be superior because it could leverage the protocol technology to build these type of use cases on top.
I mean, I think that the fungibility issue is exactly what they want to block. That's exactly why they would get Jihan in their pocket, and they don't have to blackmail him. They can just bribe him.
Well, actually, in terms of the fungibility and privacy issue, they won't even have to do that because, from what I'm hearing, that is going to be a challenge because um, privacy and anonymity is something that the Chinese Bitcoin industry are not too keen on um, because rightly, for good reasons, probably they are afraid that if that came to be associated with Bitcoin, they would get the government on their back. So you wouldn't need the government to interfere there. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure. I'd love to get confidential transactions in Bitcoin because that would just boost the value proposition. Um, but I'm sort of I'm not so optimistic that we can, at least in the current context, especially in the current context. I'm not so optimistic about that. So that people might need to use federated side chains. They might need to use uh, Tumblebit or other type of protocols that don't necessarily have the same the native on-chain privacy features, but are still reliable to some extent.
Sergi, do you want to explain to them how Tumblebit works? Many people understand how it actually works.
Yeah, sure. Let me get some water. Just 1 second.
I've been hearing about Nimblewimble too much lately.
So Mr. Hall talks about. He can't explain it himself, but he fucking talks about it.
Let's get this coin. Let's pump it. Let's pump it. Where's it at?
Out. I'm waiting for it, man. I'm waiting. I'll be in. That's the one time where I'm gonna take my cold storage, and I'm gonna put like. I mean, it depends on where we are with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin's, we're progressing. We have SegWit, Lightning. I'm not gonna put that much in. But if we're stuck at 1 megabyte, and I see the developers are all starting to migrate over there, yeah, I'm taking a nice chunk out. Definitely.
Wait. I heard two things. One thing I did hear is if we're stuck at 1 megabyte, so you want bigger blocks?
Oh, on SegWit. Well, that meaning is bigger blocks. SegWit is a bigger block, so yeah. What's possible? Hard fork is just simply not possible. That's simple as that.
All right. Well, yeah, Tumblebit. It's nothing. Well, I guess the crypto is pretty magic stuff, and I can't. I'm not going to say that I'll be able to explain fully all of this in details, but it's rather straightforward, right? I guess everyone is sort of familiar with how mixers typically work in Bitcoin. You just throw your Bitcoins in a hat with a couple other people, shuffle all this, and then they come out like not brand new, but at least you're able to remove some taint depending on the anonymity set that you have. So it depends a lot on the number of users and well, actually the number of coins that get tossed into the tumbling machine. Um, the problem that there has been historically with these type of mixers is that often they'll rely on centralized servers to do this mixing. And the issue with this is that if someone is to be able to compromise the server, they're going to be able to sort of link the essentially the inputs and the outputs so that they're going to be able to de-anonymize the transactions. What Tumblebit use is essentially Shom eCash, which is just some fancy crypto magic, which essentially makes it so that even the server itself doesn't know about where the payments are going. So there's no way for it to be, even if compromised, tell what the routes and the outputs and the inputs are going. So and also what's interesting, I guess, with Tumblebit is that they envision that it could be used as a payment hub, leveraging the payment channel technology, which would make it scale considerably. I've been interested in considering that, for example, if you want to increase your privacy um, using Lightning, it could be used as a way to bootstrap Lightning actually, because a lot of people are wondering like, how am I going to get my coins on Lightning? Who's going to be the counterparty I deal with and open a channel with and essentially lock some of my coins into and it might be interesting for that to be a Tumblebit server because then you don't have to rely on whether or not the server is going to be cooperative. You just have to lock in some coins with the server, and then you can use payment channels with everyone who does so, and that also sort of um, well, you get privacy benefits right away, and then you can forward. The server can also, if he is connected to other channels in Lightning, then you can route your transactions around depending on who you're sending them to, even if they're not connected to the Tumblebit server. At which point, combined with onion routing and payment forwarding, gives you considerable privacy. So that's pretty much it.
And so you wonder why SegWit's being blocked in China.
Oh, you don't need SegWit to implement Tumblebit. You it makes it more
No, but to implement the payment channels in a decentralized way, a trustless way, rather.
yeah. Well, see, Lightning works without SegWit. The major problem that we get if we are to implement Lightning without SegWit is that, like you said, it removes some of the trustless part in that you will need to monitor yourself or essentially have your own node um, or wallet software. It could probably be done with a wallet software. Um, you'll need to monitor yourself whether or not the counterparty or the person that you have a channel open with tries to broadcast a previous state. Now with SegWit, you can sort of use the transaction ID and hand this around to a bunch of people, and they don't even know what transaction they're watching. They just know that it's really trustless. I'm It's not my expertise per se, but what you need to know is that you can get other people to watch your channel for you and make sure that no one is cheating. So if we don't get SegWit, that's the part that we lose. Otherwise, you can do regular payment channels, and Tumblebit you can do also in a traditional mixer on chain. It just makes it less efficient and it scales a little less.
In my opinion, this is the most ambitious smart contract project the ecosystem has produced so far.
No, it's not as much as Ethereum still.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it, BRG? What do you think?
Well, what do you mean, Lightning? You meant Lightning, Flibber?
No, I was just quoting from your article where you wrote, in my opinion, the most ambitious smart contract project the ecosystem has produced so far. But and then Joff, he makes a point. What about Ethereum? That's a more ambitious.
More
project,
ambitious,
isn't it?
so ambitious it's almost impossible.
It's so ambitious it can barely works.
Yeah, well, exactly. So like I wrote in the article, since crypto and blockchain since blockchain I guess came along, everyone is sort of getting excited about what they can do and trying to fucking reinvent all of the financial system and every type of contracting contract law and like these are things that took centuries, like millennium to build, and so the proposition that Ethereum is somehow going to come along and in a couple of year displace and make it so that you don't need any lawyers anymore. You can just write your own shit on your little dApp is preposterous. Like this is not happening. This is never going to happen because while you could potentially write some contracts on Ethereum or any sort of flexible platform, uh, the terms are still dictated by arrangements in real life. So, and they are still bounded by actual meat life law. Like you don't get to uh, transgress any civil law or criminal law just because you put your shit on a blockchain. And so you're going to need lawyers anyway to prepare these contracts. Um, So in some sense, it is true that Ethereum is
Why are
quite.
you going to need a lawyer to prepare these contracts? I mean, if I say I'm going to sell my car to you, and you say I'm going to buy it for this amount, and we both agree to that, then why can't we have that? As a blockchain recorded proof that we signed this
You can do that in Bitcoin
contractual
right
agreement.
now.
But he was saying it had to be done by lawyers, and I'm saying, well, why does it? Why can't it just be
mean-
used for just anything like that?
We're gonna have decentralized companies like soon. I mean, it's gonna happen. Especially once you can connect like the computing abilities of the Ethereum language with the value of Bitcoin, and the ETH token just becomes a proof of stake token.
Yeah, well, I don't think. To be fair, I'm not too optimistic about Ethereum in the long term. But
course
to
you're
answer your question, Flibber, of course there are a couple of low-level contracts, I guess, that anyone could operate between each other. But if like lawyers exist for a reason, and because this field is very complex, and some contracts are hundreds of pages long, and the proposition that anyone is going to come along and write these up just doesn't add up. Like you can use a lawyer, and sort of he's going to say, well, this is what's legal from a
What about
like
robotic machine contracts and agreements, between themselves?
well, sure, yeah, there are a couple. Like I'm not dismissing the potential of smart contracts. I think they are very interesting, but the point I was making in the article is like we have to be humble about where we are at, and it is still a very uh, very early on, and so we're not going to displace any kind of incumbent in that domain in the next few years. So the reason why Bitcoin smart contracts, which is essentially Bitcoin scripting language, is a variant of smart contract, and because Bitcoin is not tied to any real life regulations, like it is a bearer asset. So you don't, there's no interference possible by third parties in the real world that could sort of interfere with the contract. So it is much easier for Bitcoin smart contracts to be bootstrapped, and Lightning is like 2 of 3 signatures, if you want to consider this is a smart contract, and these are things that you can use today. And the proposition that I was making is that Lightning is going to be the most large scale deployment in production of smart contract capabilities that we are going to see in the near future. And in terms
So,
of, yep.
what are you so excited about with regards to Lightning?
Well, it's scale. Like I mean, it's not because I advocate for reasonable and conservative block size that I'm not. I don't see the potential for Bitcoin to be used.
But
Yep.
But do you mean just for scale? Yeah, scaling. But is that for like? Are you thinking that we can send more, transactions as in monetary value, or we can send more transactions as in we can start doing extra stuff
Oh no,
like
no, no, no.
using
It's
the scripting language? Like, what are you thinking, Anna?
No, no, no. It's still when I refer to Lightning, it's still just very much monetary transaction. So, uh, so see, what you're thinking is sort of the consequence of, in my opinion, the term smart contracts having been sort of hijacked by some industry people who are trying to make them more complicated, and sort of more extensive than they should be. Like if you read the literature, And it's funny. I was speaking with Christopher Allen at Blockstream couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, who's like he's been around. He's been to conference with Nick Szabo and all that in the very early days when Nick was um, sort of introducing the concept of smart contracts. And he said to me that he had some discussion with some of the early cypherpunks and some of the guys that were working on that in the early days. And he asked them like, what do you think of Ethereum's smart contract, and do they fall under well, would you call them smart contract? And the guys like said no, they're not what we intended smart contracts to be. Like, and not to say that they don't have legitimate use cases, um, but it's kind of like blockchain, right? Everyone has appropriated the term and is trying to market it as their own thing, or and so the definition is getting lost, and everyone is looking for some some I don't know, some DApp or some very complicated application of smart contracts, which is why you're not seeing any of that shit coming out, because it's just too complex for the state uh, of the technology. And so if you revert that to Bitcoin, multi signature is a smart contract, and Lightning is a smart contract. Um, and so I'm excited about Lightning just because, of course, it opens up a bunch of new use cases in terms of microtransactions, in terms of transactions between machine, and very sort of granular payments. I can pretend to even imagine all of the use cases that will be enabled by Lightning. But what I do know is that it is sort of the most pragmatic, near-term application of the technology that I have seen so far. And what the purpose of the article was just to get people to reconsider it under this light.
You don't get it, dude. Lightning is it is that, and that's exactly why they don't want to let it happen, dude. I mean, you're not gonna do any convincing because that's exactly what they don't want. What you want is diametrically opposed to what they want.
So who is they?
China, well, the Chinese government and
But
anyone who's
they can't
their puppet.
Jeff. Yeah, but Jeff, Lightning doesn't need SegWit. You have to understand that. Like, we could get Lightning without SegWit. I also want to add, a multi-sig is a smart contract, but if you add end lock time to it, now it becomes a really, really smart contract.
Yep, that's true. Like a simple example that I gave in my article is Green Address, uh, the wallet, and I guess any wallet could implement this. But a two of two multi-sig with a nlock time, which essentially provides the same type of security that you would get from depositing your money into a bank, in that you get some sort of double signature to make sure that no one can steal your funds. The thing is that you remove the custodian risk, and so if you put your money into the bank, well, it's a simplification right now. I know there's FDIC insurances and whatnot, but if you put your money into a bank and it disappears, um, like you're shit out of luck, or um, to a simple if we put it in a simple context. But now with Green Address, if Green Address disappears, all you have to do is broadcast your nlock time transaction, and after the period that you specify, you get your Bitcoin back. So there are no ways for the service to steal your Bitcoins, but you still enjoy some of the features in terms of you can set daily, weekly, monthly withdrawal limits. And so even if a hacker were to hack your signature or your account, they could only get out so much Bitcoin. At which point, once you realize that, then you broadcast your end lock time, and you're able to retrieve your Bitcoins.
There's a lot more you can do with that. You can also do like streaming payment channels and stuff. I mean, streaming video through the payment channels. I mean, it's going to be very, very exciting once we get new opcodes in, especially the end lock time ones. But I mean, I just think that also that's going to be easier to do once you have segregated witness, and miners are going to want to have more of a say in those upgrades as well.
Yeah, well, nlock time is in right now, as well as check sequence with verify. So at least we were able to slip this in before the drama, and these are the only reason that we can actually have lightning without segwit. So we're lucky to have that. But I totally agree. Like one of the good talks, if anyone is interested in considering the potential for lightning. Andreas lately has been putting out somewhat good content, and he had one where he talks about essentially he calls it streaming money, and these some of the things in there will blow your mind. And he's able to put a pretty cogent use case for this type of stuff.
Oh, Flipper left the room.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, he just, see, this is like why I snapped on him earlier, because he just sits here and demands answers to shit, and then just sits there and goes, okay, and then
Listen,
runs off.
Shinobi, but you and I can't keep calm, and we can't like BRG just explain everything really, really calmly.
Yeah,
And that gets the point across much better.
It's the best way.
Get frustrated. I don't have patience. Yeah, I don't have the patience. I mean, I'm really glad that he has the patience to do this, because I don't know how he does, but I don't.
I have the patience, but I've had these conversations with Flibber more time than I can count. And he just, no matter how many times I have previously explained why something he said is not correct, not safe, not a smart thing to do, he just keeps repeating it the next time. It's like Groundhog Day.
Did you get all that recorded?
It's always recorded.
In like the snippet, like you did with the last one, like from where it starts.
Ah, okay, you want that as well?
Please.
Give me
A lot of
second.
good information there.
BFG, you are from core development, or what?
No, I wish I could say I am, but right now I work at Blockstream. I've been hired for Blockstream on a contract, just doing some of the community stuff that I talked to you guys about. So I set up the I don't know if you saw that, I set up the Segwit Resources webpage. I've been meeting and reaching out to a couple of industry people to get them to collaborate on this, um, because like I said, there's to me most of this shit that's happening is just a problem of communication. Like people have given up on reaching out to others in this space, and also like we're being drowned out by noise from trolls. So it's a little hard to like for example, I don't doubt anyone's intentions here, but when I first connected, I the first thing I hear is like Segwit is not a block size increase, and so I'm like, oh shit, like there's still so much misinformation that's being spread around, that we need some sort of accessible and digestible platforms that are objective, that are using peer-reviewed information, that do not that try to avoid as much as possible some of the political drivel, where people can use to sort of reinforce their understanding of the technology. Because I've been there, I know that there are quite a lot of people that are willing to that support core, that are interested in learning more, but do not know where to look at for proper vetted information. And so when you get to an argument with some people on Reddit, for example, but you have some sort of intuition about some information or some concept, but you're not quite sure if what you're thinking is right, then most of the time you're just going to leave it like that, and then that just leaves misinformation out there that is not being countered. So by creating some information platforms that people can look up whenever they want to validate their thinking, then that sort of just encourages people in the community to participate in the debate and make sure that we're not being crowded out by certain parties or interests that are just interested in like spreading confusion.
Sounds good.
So what was the discussion about we just had?
Again, this block size segment thing,
Oh,
but with a more technical, calmer version.